Hello, hello. Welcome to Big Garden Birdwatch Begins. I'm Jamie. First of all, a little bit of housekeeping for you. So this is a Zoom webinar. Now, you won't be able to turn on your video or your microphone. You will be able to ask us questions in the Q&A box, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. We have some time allocated for questions at the end, but we might pick up on some as we go on as well. If we don't get to all your questions, we'll try and answer them directly to you after the event. There's no chat function enabled for this event. And if you have any technical issues, someone from the events team is available to help, although with more specific Zoom issues, they may not be able to assist you with those. So first of all, I'd like to say hello to our panel of guests and speakers today. We have Luke Phillips. Hello, Luke, are you there? Hello. We have Katie Monk from our Youth Council. Hello, Katie. And we have Sean Denny from our Wildlife team. Now, in this session, which will last about 45 minutes, we'll be talking about our predictions for Big Garden Birdwatch this year. We'll be hearing how to keep your wildlife in your garden safe and healthy. Katie will be doing Big Garden Birdwatch live. She's just started. She's looking at her window now, aren't you, Katie? See what she can see, and we'll be reporting back. And also, you can join in as well. Do let us know what you're seeing. If you haven't already found it, there is information on our website on Big Garden Birdwatch. We'll pop that link into the chat. And we can see on there, this is really exciting this year because you can see that 79,260 birds have been counted so far. Now, bear in mind, that's only the number of people that are counting and adding their data, their numbers online as they do it. Obviously, we do still get a large number in the post and other people will add their data afterwards. But yeah, so nearly 80,000 birds have been counted so far. And we can see that the house sparrow is in fact leading, which is interesting. Yeah, we'll keep an eye on those and we'll report back to you on how that's going throughout this session. So in this first segment, we're going to talk a little bit about what we might actually see. So Luke, do you have any predictions? Should we talk first about what we've seen over the last few years, the kind of movements and conservation status, and then move on to what people might actually.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a really good morning here so far. Just so everybody knows, I had a quick attempt at my Big Garden Birdwatch this morning, first thing, and it didn't go too badly. But more of that later. But
Okay,
yeah,
look
so
forward to that.
song thrush though, Jamie. I didn't get one this morning in my garden.
No, no, not many of us do now. And I remember, when I was growing up in the 80s, we would have the little anvil in our garden. Well, not an actual anvil, but a rock where the songthrush would visit, and you would find the shells of snails smashed beside it. No more. Talking to Peter Holden in the previous session, Song Thrush featured at number 10 in the first ever Big Garden Birdwatch back in 1979, 45 years ago. Now, last year it was at number 20. Probably unlikely to appear in many gardens. Why is this? What's happened to these birds?
Yeah, no, it's been a dramatic drop to be honest, and yeah, since 1979, it's been yeah, the numbers have dropped by 80% in the Big Garden Birdwatch, which is really significant, and it just goes to show why we do Big Garden Birdwatch. It shows these very trends. I mean, there's a few theories around song thrush, and just to kind of touch on one that isn't necessarily fully understood yet, but you mentioned the anvil and what that is essentially. Song thrushes have a favorite rock in the garden that they take snails to. That's a big part of their diet, slugs and snails. So it's quite easy to draw a sort of conclusion around things like slug pellets. Lots and lots of slug pellets get used in the UK every single year, and that is you'd think that would definitely have an impact. So it's something we can all kind of do to help. But the studies are still going on into that. But something we can be absolutely sure about is that their decline is linked to that sort of change in the wider countryside, woodland management, hedgerow management. They're just suffering because of that wider issues in the countryside. Song thrushes they're quite shy birds. They need a nice thick hedgerow to live in. When I do see one in the garden, which isn't that often, there is one in the spring that often sings right at the very top in some of the taller trees, but often like to skulk around the edges. So yeah, a bit of a shy bird. They need that cover. But also, yeah, there's links as well to kind of wet areas. That's right, Jamie, isn't it? They love a sort of damp, boggy area as well. Because aside from slugs and snails, they like to dig into the soil and get earthworms and things like that. And that sort of wetter patches are really good for them. And also, this is a bird as well that nests when they nest. they line their nest with mud, or a little bit of mud anyway, not as much as blackbirds. That's one of the little tips you can use to sort of tell the difference between a songthrush nest and a blackbird nest. But there's a little clue in that element as well. But yeah, lots of factors, and it's a real shame because I love song thrushes. They sound incredible, don't they?
They really do. There is a little glimmer of hope though, because I know that the 10-year trend for song thrushes has shown that they've sort of gone up by 2%. I mean, it's
Mm.
tiny, but there are signs that with better kind of management of the countryside, with farmers who are now absolutely passionate about getting wildlife back in, these
Definitely.
efforts are being made, aren't they? So there is some hope for the song thrush.
There is, yeah, absolutely. And like I said earlier on, keep doing the big garden birdwatch every single year, and we'll hopefully see that trend start to reverse. So yeah, fingers crossed for the song thrush, eh?
All fingers crossed. Let's go to the next one, which is this is a slightly better story. So
Mm.
certainly in the sense of gardens, goldfinches just move in. They're quite bold. They don't care if there's not much cover. They'll just sit on your bird feeder for the whole for the whole hour probably. And they're like a teasel, don't they?
They do, yeah. This is a huge success story. So I can't quite do this. I'm not old enough. But if you cast your minds back to the sort of mid 70s and into the mid 80s, goldfinches were in decline in the UK. They were dropping quite dramatically. But in more recent decades, they've completely turned that around. They're now one of the sort of commonest garden birds, and that's happened relatively quickly. So you got this gorgeous picture here of them on teasel, and that's a great plant to have in the garden. They look spectacular almost year round, and you can see how their beaks are kind of very sort of quite narrow and pointy, so they can kind of get into the teasel heads to get the seeds out. But food is the kind of key to goldfinch's success. So we all feed nowadays things like sunflowers, sunflower hearts in particular, and Niger seed as well, and they're both favourite foods of goldfinch. And one of the biggest drivers of their success is their winter survival. So, breeding success is one thing, but birds have to make it through the winter to get to the following spring to breed. So the more food you've got, the better chance of surviving through the winter. And we love feeding garden birds, and goldfinches love us feeding them. So clearly they're doing very well. And you've seen some interesting places where they nest as well, Jamie, haven't you?
Yeah, do you know what they I live on a new build estate.
Mm,
They colonize really quickly, and they will move in and they'll put their lovely little delicate
mm,
cup-shaped nests in even the smallest saplings I found. They're almost at eye level. So they're quite bold. What's interesting, we're talking about conservation status in this segment. So the goldfinch is now green. It's got a green status in the UK. Songthrush, I think, is red. So the next two birds we're going to talk about are red, surprisingly, because these are the two at the top of the top 10, as it were. Well, near the top of the top 10. Starlings. What's gone wrong with
mm.
starlings?
Yeah, so starlings is actually it's quite a complex species to kind of look into. So their decline, there's some clear links around nest site availability. So this is a bird that is massively associated with houses, and they nest often in houses. They're not something that you can see in a woodland necessarily nesting in a tree. Go back thousands of years, and actually that is something they would do. Very rarely you do see a starling nesting in a dead tree in a hole, but these days they're associated with our houses. And there's other species which are in severe decline, one of which we'll touch on next. But there's another species that we certainly won't see at the moment, and that's the swift. And all these species have things in common. They nest in our houses. So those nesting opportunities are less. Therefore, clearly, the numbers will decline. So there's something, there's a fantastic campaigner, Hannah Bourne Taylor. If anybody's familiar with her, she's the most passionate and inspiring person you could ever meet. And she's leading this campaign to install swift bricks. These are little sort of hollow bricks you can put in houses, allow the swifts to nest in. But starling is another species that can sort of benefit from those nest sites. The other factor is food. So starlings are a really interesting one. So their main diet is things like leather jackets, which are grubs that live underground, which are cranefly larvae, daddy longlegs larvae. And so they need to get to them. So this is a really interesting one. They rely on lawns a lot, interestingly. So a healthy bit of lawn in the garden is not a bad thing for a starling. But I I always have to mention this because it's an absolute pet hate of mine, and that's artificial lawns. So, if they're not sure of the trend in the UK necessarily, but I'm seeing more people using that, which is certainly really bad news for starlings. But yeah, it's such a shame to see less starlings. They're so charismatic, and of course they're famous for the murmuration. But there's an important thing here to remember that the wintering starlings that come to the UK and we see murmuring, if that's a word, are often from Scandinavia and Eastern Europe. So they come in for the winter and kind of boost our numbers. So when we're talking about some of the declines, and the reason they're on the red list is because of their breeding numbers declining in the UK. So those are kind of resident ones. So when you see half a million, maybe if you're really lucky, in a huge murmuration, it's really hard to think that they're declining. But they absolutely certainly are. So yeah, so nest sites for these guys, and yeah, lots of grubs in the lawn. That's what they need.
Let's take a look at the sparrow, which was number one, has been number one for quite a while now, but not doing too well. This is the female. We've also got a shot of the male. House sparrows, again, red listed, aren't they?
They are, and often a surprise. We talk about house sparrows, every year in the Big Garden Bird George, because they are number one. They are always kind of generally on top, and I can't see that changing necessarily this year. It is often the case, but it's again, being at the top isn't necessarily a good sign. They have declined by just over 50%, since the 70s as a breeding species, and again, similar to the starling, nest sites. They need these old houses and old buildings to nest in. But one of the biggest drivers of the decline of sparrows is the food availability. The insect life that they need in the summer. To feed their chicks. And if you're in London, I mean, I was in London just a few days ago, walking through what looked like a nice sort of park, green space, not a single sparrow. And that wouldn't have been the case just a few decades ago. So this has been a really, really rapid decline. So it's definitely something to be worried about. And there's another really interesting thing with sparrows, and anybody who has them in the garden will probably be aware of this, that if you notice, they love one or two particular bushes. They have these sort of I like to call them sort of community hubs, because there's always a community of sparrows. There's always lots of them, and they have these kind of hubs that they all get together in. And I've seen a whole colony kind of disperse and almost destroyed because one of those hubs disappeared. So just taking one or two bushes out of a garden or a street, and where sparrows love to kind of gather and congregate, can have quite detrimental impacts on their kind of community and the society of sparrows. They love being in groups and together. So yeah, it's an interesting one. But I think their decline has kind of started to halt these days. And interestingly, and this is a glimmer of hope, because it's always nice to have a glimmer of hope. I know of houses, my uncle's house is a particular example, was built in the 90s. And in recent years, house sparrows have now moved in. So what was newer build houses with no opportunities for sparrows to nest in, 30 years on, clearly he's not been fixing his roof properly or his guttering, because house sparrows have now moved in and they've colonized that area. So, things can change for species. And yeah, this is a good example where things could change in the future.
Yeah, and we sort of know what house sparrows need, don't we? So it
Mm.
is knowing what those birds need. It helps us kind of shape the environment and make sure that they've got somewhere to go. So well worth everyone watching, keep an eye on not just your garden bushes and hedges, but what's in your local neighbourhood, what is in your local parks. Keep an eye on it, whether there's kind of any threats to where that there's house sparrows are using those areas. We'll come to Katie shortly to see how she's getting on with her big garden birdwatch. But Luke, very quickly, you've got some predictions, haven't you? I don't think these are predictions, or whether these are just the dreams and wishes of what
I
people
mean,
might.
yeah, they are, but there's an element of truth in there. So let's head on to the next slide and see what I've ambitiously come up with. Um, it's a little bit crazy, really. Right, here's a little brown bird that if you recognise this, then top marks. So I want to cast everybody's minds back to something that happened last autumn, and still happening now to some degree, but in the autumn it was really prominent. We were getting lots of storms coming across the Atlantic from America. And it brought a surprising amount of American species over. And historically, this has only happened once or twice, and this is just me being wildly ambitious, right? So, if this comes true, I'll be really, really chuffed. But sometimes these American birds that arrive in the autumn can sort of linger around and winter, and they often, not often, I'm saying often in terms of there's probably only ever been just a handful, maybe half a dozen examples of this, but yeah, so they can overwinter sometimes in gardens. So this is a northern water thrush and looks a lot like a redwing. So if you see a bird that looks like this in your garden, it's almost certainly going to be a redwing, not a northern water thrush. But this is in Essex at the moment, and it's the one example of an American sort of songbird that's lingering around, probably as a result of birds coming in last year. So, but yeah, back I think 10 or 15 years ago, there was a yellow-rumped warbler in somebody's garden in the north of England as well, which was feeding on fat balls. That's another North American species that should have been in South America, but was over here in a garden. So just goes to show it, everybody looking in their gardens, midwinter can throw up very, very occasionally some surprises. We'll pop onto the next slide. I think it's another picture of the water thrush there. But a subtly pretty bird. I like them. But yeah, thanks to Steve Carey as well for that picture. He went to see that bird in Essex and sent a picture in. So something that's a bit more likely, I guess, is the waxwing. And there's no way on earth we could not mention waxwings. This year they've kind of
Do
been,
you know what? We
yeah,
have every single webinar. We're obsessed with them because
yeah, I'm quite right.
Ben Andrew has captured a lovely shot, which we showed last time, of the waxwings doing very passing behaviour, which I
Oh
didn't know
wow.
they did while they were still overwintering in the UK. And this one looks like it just flicked the berry in the air, hoping to catch it, doesn't it?
It is, yeah, yeah. This is my picture actually. One of my pictures I've taken, and
It's
yeah, just
beautiful.
managed to press the shutter at the right time as it did that. But yeah, I mean, I live in the southwest of England, and waxwings haven't quite made it down here yet. And to be honest, they're taking their time, and I'm starting to get a little bit worried that they're not going to make it this far south. So I might not see them personally, but yeah, I think I remember rightly, Jamie. You looked this up, but they weren't they 77th last year in the list
Yeah,
of birds, yeah.
yeah. So they were certainly not in the top 10. Yeah, 77th. So our prediction is that they will
Yeah.
be higher than 77. I'm not. I did see top 50, but I think that's doubtful. I think they will be higher than 77 this year. I think
Yeah,
there's a
I,
lot
I
around.
I'll put 50p on that for sure. But yeah, so keep an eye on the berry bushes, and they will come down to apples in gardens. If you put spike a load of apples cut in half on a tree or something like that, you can lure them in, which is a real treat. But again, this is a prediction. You're going to be very lucky if you get them actually in your garden. So but yeah, fingers crossed some of you do. But yeah, but the next bird actually is something I think people will start seeing much more in gardens. So I did my bird watch this morning, kind of first thing, and I actually had four of these in the garden, and this is a black cap. So when I say black cap, a lot of people think, oh, hang on a minute, that's a spring bird. That's a bird that arrives from North Africa in spring, usually about April time. They've got a beautiful song. It's a feature of a dawn chorus in nice woodland or some on a nature reserve. But things are changing dramatically. And in the last decade or so, more and more blackcaps are coming to the UK from countries like Germany and Poland. And they're spending the winter here every year. And it's linked kind of, we mentioned goldfinches earlier on. It's linked to that, the fact that we feed birds. We love feeding birds in this country. So blackcaps have kind of learned that. They've changed their migratory patterns. And because migratory patterns are kind of grained into their sort of genetics, basically, more and more blackcaps are coming here, and they're getting quite faithful to gardens as well. I always get them now every winter. They arrive at the same time. Love the fat balls. They're eating the apples that I've put out ambitiously for waxwings in my garden, but blackcaps are loving it. But it's a bird that you're going to see probably more often, more likely in the south. But as winters are getting warmer, that's another contributing factor to blackcaps coming here for the winter. It's a bit warmer than it used to be, and they're going to be moving north. So, but yeah, last slide from me is the female, because you can tell males and female apart with the black caps. So if you have a look at the next slide, and it's hopefully, if it appears, there we go, a lovely female black cap, but with a reddish brown cap, not a black cap. But yeah, so I think yeah they'll be doing well. So good luck on those few.
Yes. Okay. Be interested to see what Katie's been seeing. Katie, how are you getting on? Thank you, Luke. How are you getting on? Have you had anything visiting so far?
I'm actually getting on a lot better than I expected because this morning it was totally barren. But I've actually had one robin, one coal tit, and one blue tit. The blue tit very much scared the robin away, which is surprising because I always thought the robins were a bit more aggressive than the blue tits because the coal tits, sorry, because they are very territorial. But the coal tit, I think, has just been flitting back and forth from wherever it's taking its food or something, and coming back to the feeder really regularly, which is really nice to see. And the robin flew off very quickly. It's very windy up here today. But
What food did you put out to attract them?
so I've just got really simple mixed seed sunflower hearts, kind of, I'm not sure what the exact grain is, but it's just the one you usually find most commonly. And then I also have a Niger seed feeder because I absolutely love goldfinches, especially the sound of them when you hear them flying over your head. It's just such a nice sound to hear.
It is a charm of goldfinches. We've actually
Yes.
had not a question, but a message in from Alan, who's in central Scotland, and just a few minutes ago he was watching 8 to 12 goldfinches
Oh.
fighting each other for a place on his seed feeder, and it's fun to watch. Fun to watch. Also fun to photograph. If anyone wants to watch our previous webinar, which is now on YouTube, we can post that link for you. Ben Andrew talks a lot. Our wildlife photographer talks a lot about capturing bird behavior, and around the feeder is a great place to get that bird behavior, to get those kind of scuffles like you were talking about, Katie, and like Alan's referring to the goldfinches. Alan's now got greenfinches joining, and it's all kicking off in Alan's garden. So what were you saying just now about the kind of the hierarchy of birds, Katie? Which would you think would be top of the pecking order on the bird feeders, on the hanging
Yeah.
feeders?
So obviously you have the blue tits, you have all the different types of tits. So the blue tits, I think, are the most aggressive one because they always seem to get first place on the feeder. But then obviously when you get higher up, yes, wood pigeons, they kind of just skulk around at the bottom of the feeders usually. But when you get the corvids coming in, like the rooks and the crows, they will automatically scare everything off. But definitely robins are probably up there. Dunnocks are probably right at the bottom because they are just so shy and awkward when they come to feeders. They just don't like to be there whatsoever.
Yeah, they'll skulk underneath. Now, as well as Katie, lots of other people are taking part. So I've just looked at the results page. Well, not the results page, the Big Garden Birdwatch web page. I can see that over 121 birds, 121,000 birds have been counted so far. And again, these are just the results of people that are entering their data straight away onto the internet. Doesn't count all the kind of posts, things we get in the post, or people that want to upload their records afterwards. But at the moment, House Sparrow is in the lead, followed by Blue Set, followed by Starling. So same results so far as last year. It could be really interesting though, and there's a bit of competition going on because we've listed the top counties here. It's like Lancashire is in the lead. Lots of people from Lancashire are submitting their results. Um, Katie, what part of the roughly what part of the country are you in? Just to give us
I'm
an idea.
in, yeah, I'm right up north. I'm in St Andrews in Fife. So it's like quite an urban area, and quite coastal as well. So we get a few different birds coming in.
Oh, now I remember when Peter Holden was talking about weird bird like results. He did mention a gannet that was written in one of the earlier Big Garden Bird Watches. I don't know if it actually landed though, because of course the rule is it has to land. And just a reminder that Big Garden Bird Watch runs from today until Sunday. And Katie, are you happy to explain how the counting works?
Yeah, of course. So all you have to do is you just sit in your living room or your bedroom, wherever you can see out into your garden, sit there for an hour and you count the maximum number of birds you see at any one time. For example, you can't count them consecutively. So if one coal tit, so I keep seeing coal tits come to the feeder, that's not three coal tits every time they come to the feeder three times. That is just one coal tit because I have not seen three coal tits all together in a flock, unfortunately, much to my dismay. But yeah, it's just the maximum number of birds, no flyovers. As much as you want to see the kestrel or the sparrowhawk that's coming over, you just want the birds that land in your garden, wherever that is.
Well, let's hope that your coltits increase because more than one coltit is a good thing to have. Coltits are great because they feel quite special, don't they? It's like they fly in, they grab something and then disappear. It's like it's caching the food somewhere, it's hiding that
Yeah,
food ready to eat
they're very
later on.
sweet.
Yeah, we like a coltit. Now, Sean Denny has been from our wildlife team has been patiently waiting in the wings, as it were, because we're going to hear all about. And thank you, Katie, by the way. We'll come back to you later and hear how you're getting on. Sean is going to tell us all about how to keep our wildlife safe and healthy in the garden. Over to you, Sean.
Yeah. So yeah, I work in the wildlife team at the RSPB, and we have so many people like get in touch with us about different diseases that can affect our garden birds. Just bear in mind that the next slide will include photos of some dead and diseased birds. So just a bit of preparation and pre-warning for you there. So go on to the next slide. So we have different diseases reported to us. These are probably the most common ones. The first being trichomoniasis. So this is caused by a parasite, and what happens is that the throat swells up. So this makes it really hard to breathe and swallow. You often get birds looking very lethargic, fluffed up, just like with this chaffinch here. And you might also notice congealed food around their beak, which they haven't been able to swallow. Another common disease reported is avian pox. So that's caused by a virus. And what happens is that lots of little warty growths develop around the face and other parts of the body. Adult birds are actually really, birds can fare very well despite the warts on their face and their body. But what happens is that fatalities might occur if they grow over the beak or the eyes or their limbs, because obviously that will impact their ability to see, feed, and move. Another common disease that we get asked about are leg abnormalities. So these commonly affect finches. As you can see here, the male bullfinch. And there are two types. One is caused by a virus, and we call that tasselfoot. And the second is caused by mites, and we call that mange. So what happens is that very excessive growths grow all along the leg, and that might extend from down to the feet and also to the digits as well. As a side, at the moment, the RSPB is carrying out a really important research study to look into the spread of trichomoniasis. So if you notice any birds in your garden with the signs and symptoms, such as the fluffed up and lethargic appearance in your birds, it's really important that you get in touch with us via the email address below, just because we really want to use those gardens as part of the research study. If you go on to the next slide. So a really important way to help minimize these diseases in our garden birds is obviously through routine cleaning. We recommend cleaning feeders once a week, following this really simple 7-step cycle. So obviously, whenever you clean your feeding stations, it's important to wear gloves. That creates the barrier. And making sure to empty any food from your feeders. If it's like a hanging seed feeder, it's important to dismantle that, just because that means you can really get into nooks and crannies and clean it more thoroughly. Using a brush, it's important to scrub all the surfaces with some warm soapy water and then rinsing off any like the debris that's left behind. With step 5, it's so important to dry out your feeders, just because the drying process can actually kill some of the harmful pathogens. And then using a really effective bird-safe disinfectant, using all over the feeding station, can help, further remove any harmful pathogens. The one that we recommend is Arc Cleanse. So this is completely wildlife friendly, and you can buy it via our RSPB shop, and obviously follow all the manufacturer's guidelines and use it correctly. With like a final rinse off and dry. Once it's fully dried out, you can then top up your feeders and pop them back out into the garden so that your birds can keep using them. And obviously, when you finish cleaning your feeding stations, it's always important to store your equipment away from the garden in a safe space like a shed or garage. So in the wildlife team, we're asked so many questions linked with diseases. I'm just going to try and debunk some of those for you now. The first one is always, can I catch diseases from these birds? So it's always important to remember that there is a risk to people, but this tends to be quite low. And that's why we suggest maintaining your strict hygiene measures. So never handle sick or dead wild birds, leave that to the experts. And when you're cleaning your feeding stations, make sure just to wear gloves and obviously wash your hands thoroughly. People often ask us about diseases passing to our garden bird, our garden bird diseases passing to our pets, because obviously, pets go into our gardens all the time. So while some diseases can spread to other species, generally the risk is low because the ones I've mentioned tend to be specific just to birds. But we still recommend good hygiene practices and never letting your pet near to sick or dead wild birds. Obviously, if this does happen, it's important to seek veterinary advice immediately and following whatever they suggest. Another question we get asked, probably the most common one actually, is it possible to treat sick wild birds in my garden? So we understand that, it's very upsetting to see birds look poorly, but when it comes to medicating wild animals, there's no safe way to do this because we can't guarantee that the correct dose goes to a poorly animal without a healthy bird getting the same medication. So while some drugs can help some species, they actually can be very lethal to others. So it's just not an option. On to the next slide. So as well as obviously preventing these disease spread in our gardens, another really important thing with diseases is to report them. So we're partners with a really excellent group of vets called Garden Wildlife Health. So we partner up with them where we encourage people to report any diseased birds to them directly. You can do this via their website. They've got a really straightforward form. You can just report online. And this is important to help us detect like trends and spread and all the species that are being affected by diseases. And then in summary, it's important to acknowledge that our birds will get diseases, but that prevention through cleaning is essential. And if you do notice signs of disease, to report them to Garden Wildlife Health for monitoring purposes.
Sian, thank you so much. And if you've got any questions for Sian, please pop them in the Q&A box and we'll do our very best to answer you. I try and clean my bird feeders as often as I can. You can often really tell which are the most popular areas, the messiest bits, and which are the, like goldfinches especially, as I say, they will sit on your feeder and they do create that much mess, but you can tell where they've been. But yeah, really, really interesting about trichomoniasis, and we've posted the email address for the wildlife inquiries team into the chat for you so that you can get in touch if you find any birds with signs of that disease. We've also put the link to our shop page, which sells, I don't know if it's that specific cleaning product you mentioned, Sian. Hopefully it's on there. There's a few kind of safety and hygiene products on there. What sort of brush would you use, Sian? Because I've used a bottle brush before for those tube feeders. What sort of brush would you recommend?
Anything that has like very sort of anything with really good strong like bristles, just to really scrub the surfaces.
Yeah.
Just because sometimes if food builds up, it can get quite sort of condensed on a feeding station.
Yeah.
So scrubbing them with something really hard will be perfect.
Yeah, so I've used in the past old toothbrushes when they're quite stiff. Car cleaning brush, like a tube-shaped car cleaning brush, bottle brush. But yeah, as you say, you need one that's quite robust to kind of scrub off the harder bits. What
Definitely.
worth doing now, keep your garden birds healthy. Thank you so much, Sian. Really, very much appreciated. While I've got you though, I'm aware that you're actually near a window today. You're up at HQ, RSPB HQ in Sandy. Have you seen anything out the window? Are there any birds where you are?
Yes, I'm at the lodge today, and I'm overlooking the garden. So as I was walking up here, I definitely counted a good couple of blue tits, and I think I was lucky enough to spot a greenfinch too, which are rare nowadays. So that was very special.
And that's true. Greenfinch is one of the birds that's been most heavily hit by trichomoniasis. So yeah, that's fantastic that they're around. Thank you very much, Sian. Let's cut very quickly back to Katie now and just see, Katie, have you had any progress with your big garden bird watch on your windy big garden bird watch?
I've got one wood pigeon right now that's picking up all the scraps that the coulter and the robin dropped. But other than that, I have nothing. But it still counts, and that's what matters.
Everything counts. Even nothing counts. I know we say this every year, but even if you see no birds at all, that's still really interesting information. And even just one wood pigeon makes a difference.
Got
Thank
data.
you. Thank you, Katie. We'll come back to you later. We're going to take a look now at what you might see in your garden if you were in one of the UK's overseas territories. Now, the RSPB works all around the world on conservation projects, and we're going to take a look at some of those gardens. The first little clip is from our colleague Sasha Clemenson, who works in the Falkland Islands. And he has, when I asked him if he could do this for us, he has kind of taken gardens slightly loosely and wandered down to the end of his road to see what he can see. Over to Sasha.
Hello there, my name's Sasha Clemenson. I work for RSPB, but I'm actually based in the Falkland Islands, one of the 14 British overseas territories. It's summertime down here, so it's New Year's. We had a lovely New Year's Eve with the family, and I've snuck out after supper. The kids are watching Shrek, and I'm doing a little bird watch with a friendly colony of Gentoo penguins. It's not this, you might have gathered this isn't actually my garden, but we're just outside Stanley, the capital of the Falklands. So I've just snuck out to spend a little bit of time with some Gentoo penguins. That's 3 Gentoos just calling, throwing their heads up in the air and calling just over there. Gentoo penguins are the fastest swimming penguin. Falkland Islands are the global stronghold for Gentoo penguins. There are more than 100,000 pairs here, and they're wonderful. And you can see when you sit still, they come very close to you. You don't need to go close to them. This is a lovely colony that's on a former minefield. They cleared all the minefields with support from the British government. And you can just come here and spend a lovely evening listening to Gentoo penguins calling. At the moment, they've got their chicks. The successful pairs will have 2 chicks because they lay 2 eggs. And we've got lots of successful pairs this year. It seems to be pretty good so far this year. Generally, Gentoo penguins are doing okay. We have been looking to encourage having marine protected areas around the Falkland Islands. There aren't any currently, but we're hoping that there might be, which would give a really nice bright future for Gentoo penguins here.
Thank you very much, Sasha. Now, another island that we work on is Gough Island, part of Tristan da Cunha, and we've been involved in a major seabird restoration project there over the last few years, trying to remove the invasive house mice, which are absolutely decimating the populations of seabirds. So what might you see if you were on Gough Island doing a big garden bird watch? Well, Gough is a small island in the South Atlantic. So the team tells me that although we're in the midst of winter here, it's actually their summer, although they still have a lot of rain on Gough. The base for the RSPB team is situated near the cliffs, so they get a range of seabirds flying over. Obviously, they can't count those if they were doing a big garden bird watch, but there are a few that are really their kind of back garden birds. So we start off with the great shearwater. I think we've got a couple of slides of these, perhaps one with a video, which we'll go to in a second. So at dusk, they gather in thousands, circling above until they decide to land, not gracefully, they note, at their nest sites or burrows. This is one in its burrow. They're not a quiet bird and form the lullaby of the nights with their haunting call, some describe as a cry like a crying baby. So let's go to the next slide, which I think is the video of the shearwater. See if we can hear it. Oh, yeah, I could just about hear that. It was fairly quiet, but you could hear there's a quite distinct sound. Let's have a look at the next picture. So this one, I'm fascinated by this. This is one of, I think, the most beautiful birds on Gough Island. This is a sooty albatross. So this is at the end of the garden at the base on Gough Island. It's a sooty albatross nest, and these birds greet each other by throwing their heads back and screaming. And currently, they've got a little chick still being guarded by its parent. So again, if they were doing a big garden bird watch, they could just look out of their window, and this is what they would see. I think we've got another shot of this one as well. Stunning bird, that lovely kind of soft image. It's very attentive parent there. Lovely sooty albatross. Brilliant. Thank you so much to the Gough team and also to Sasha on the Falkland Islands for sending us across a little sample of what we might see if we were doing big garden bird watch overseas. Let's see if we've got any questions. Alan, who is fantastic. Thank you, Alan. Alan is keeping us up to date with what's going on in his garden. He's now got 4 tree sparrows now on his feeder via one of his apple trees. Now, tree sparrows in the garden is quite unusual. I'm going to open up the floor to our guests there, Katie, Sean, and Luke, if you want to come back. Luke, tree sparrows in the garden, that's not a regular occurrence, is it?
Depends where you live, to be honest. Where I'm in Dorset, I think they're actually extinct as a breeding species now in Dorset, or very close to. But I know somebody who lives up in Yorkshire, and in fact, one of our nature reserves, Bempton Cliffs, which a lot of people associate more with things like gannets and puffins that nest there. They get lots and lots of tree sparrows on their feeders. So yeah, tree sparrows are quite rare. They're often associated more with farmland and kind of open countryside. They've declined massively. I think it's this is off the top of my head, but something around the 90% mark since the 70s. I think it's really, really stark. But where you do get them, they will come into gardens and mix in with house sparrows. So there's always a fun ID challenge. But yeah, tree sparrows are not sexually dimorphic like our house sparrow. Both sexes look the same. And they've got a lovely white cheek with a black spot and a brown head. So yeah, tree sparrows, absolutely love them.
Nice. Casey, you told us you're very far up north. Do you have tree sparrows where you are?
Yeah, so I actually had them when I did my birdwatch last year at the other end of St Andrews, but unfortunately I'm not seeing any around this end, which is quite annoying. I was thinking about like earlier when Luke was mentioning the waxwings, earlier on in the year, about a couple of months ago, I had them in my front garden, but unfortunately I thought they all went down south, but obviously not that far down south where you are, Luke.
Yeah, not yet, not yet. But they do, like you say, they tend to arrive in sort of Scotland and sort of along the east coast, particularly the northeast coast, and then they sort of move gradually southwest. So, yeah, Dorset, where I am, there's a flock of 8 currently over in Poole, which is the other end of Dorset to where I am. But another few weeks, maybe a month, and they'll eventually make it to me. But it's the same birds as you'll have been getting, Katie, up there. They're the same birds moving south, but yeah, they're on their way.
Okay, last chance to send us a few questions. So remember, we have experts here who can help you answer your garden bird questions. Do pop them in the Q&A box. While we're waiting to see if anyone's got questions, I'll just let you all know that we do have a final Big Garden Bird Watch online session for members next week. It's on Tuesday, the 30th of January. That's at 12 noon. Now, on that one, we'll be looking back over Big Garden Bird Watch weekend, reflecting on what we've all seen. And obviously, feel free to join in and tell us what you've been seeing as well. We'll also be looking at what's coming up in the nature calendar to kind of whet your appetite for the year ahead in your garden and beyond. So the dawn chorus, spring migration. Find out about the RSPB's nature reserves and the friendly local groups where you'll be able to see so much more. So Alistair McKee from our local group team will be joining us. We also have Indy Keemore Green, who'll be talking about what he's been seeing and what he's looking forward to. Now, whether you're new to the world of birding or a seasoned expert, we've got lots of ideas for things to do, places to go. And finally, in that session, we have got our wildlife gardening expert, Adrian Thomas, to talk about garden projects you could be planning for 2024. We do have another little online free session for members planned, and that's with Luke. We're going to be talking about gulls, aren't we, Luke? They're tricky.
We are, yeah. I'm on a bit of a personal mission to try and big up gulls a bit more because they've got a bit of a dodgy reputation. Particularly around where I'm down on the south coast. They're well known for stealing pasties and that malarkey, but they're incredible birds. There's a whole range of species. They do incredible things like migrate hundreds, if not thousands of miles. They're a nice challenge, I think, for bird watchers as well. They're not the easiest things to ID. But yeah, I will reveal all on the 22nd of February.
22nd of February, that's at 12 noon, and we'll put those links into the chat so you can see where to register as well. Right. We have got some questions. We've got some points as well. So Merrick has said waxwings have been seen in Colchester at the end of December. So they have spread pretty much all around the country as they decimate the berry bushes. Now we've got talking bushes. We've got a question from Carrie. Carrie says, "I have a large hawthorn bush which is always colonised with house sparrows, but I haven't seen any using this for the last 2 years. Any thoughts on why the colony might have moved?" Anyone got any ideas? Well, I mean, there's lots of reasons we've talked about why house sparrows go. Bushes are still there, but food source perhaps.
It could be, yeah. Maybe they can be a little bit finicky sometimes. They've up sticks, and you might find them a few gardens away. Hopefully, they haven't kind of disappeared too far. It would be unusual if the whole kind of colony's kind of disappeared, but yeah, I imagine they still appear on your bird feeders though if they're not in your hawthorn. So fingers crossed they're not too far away. But yeah, they've unfortunately found a better bush, maybe.
Maybe. Sean, house sparrows do get affected by disease, don't they? So I know we have talked about avian malaria in the past affecting house sparrows in London. Is there a particular issue with house sparrows?
Yeah, so historically, the numbers of house sparrows in London went down, and that was linked with avian malaria. But that was quite a specific situation, more widespread. They're fairly safe from that. So yeah, I agree with Luke. It's probably more to do with them being very fussy and finding a better place to live.
And of course,
we disrespect your hawthorn.
Yes, no disrespect to your hawthorn, Carrie. Please keep growing hawthorns. I've got one in my garden, and Absolutely love it. And obviously we can put out nesting boxes for sparrows. Talking of which, Graham says you mentioned house-based nesting for swifts and starlings. What can you get for? Can you buy starling boxes? I don't know if we sell them, do we? Is there such a thing?
Yeah, so we sell a specific starling nest box. It's like an Apex box, and that's designed with the specific hole requirement for starlings. So that's on our shop as well.
Okay, I'm just having a quick look so we can post the link in the chat so everyone can see. Oh yeah, well, yes. So it looks very much like a blue tip type box, but obviously with a bit larger. Starlings can't fit in Swift boxes, can they?
Not normally, no. No, if the hole kind of gets a little bit bigger through a bit of wear and tear, sometimes they'll squeeze in. They can get through quite small holes, surprisingly, but
Yeah.
yeah. We also do those nice little sparrow terraces, don't we? With kind of 3 nest boxes in one, and yeah, I've seen sparrows use both ends, but never all 3 used. They seem to like. It's quite funny that they just use the ends. They don't like being too close to each other, maybe, but
Yeah. So you can get boxes for all of these things. And if sparrows will move into Swift boxes, in fact, it's not a bad thing if a sparrow moves into a Swift box. Swifts need that space too, but sparrows also need a home, don't they, Luke? We don't
yeah, yeah,
eject
yeah,
the
yeah.
sparrow.
Absolutely, yeah. And if the time works, because house sparrows can nest quite early because they're resident birds, their breeding season starts early. Swifts don't get back and start breeding till kind of mid-May, really. But it's been known that swifts will boot out house sparrows. So if you've got house sparrows in there and a swift comes back and finds them in there, they're quite feisty, and swifts will, they'll oust them and make them go find somewhere else. So it's brutal out there.
It really is. 140,000 birds counted so far on the website, that is anyway. Katie, any more movement or any more visitors to your garden?
Gonna go up by 4, that 140,000 after the session's ended.
Oh,
I've not
nice.
had anything, unfortunately, since, but I'm quite happy with the mix of species. So,
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you've got a good range there. What's the most unusual thing you've had in your garden so far, like outside the big garden birdwatch?
ooh,
Have
our
you been?
garden's not very unique. I mean, I've had the Northern Lights out my bedroom window, so I'm happy with
Oh,
that. So I'll take that. I got wax
fantastic.
swings out my bedroom window and then Northern Lights on the same day. So I was like, this couldn't get any better, really.
Oh. Can I
That
chip
is
in with a
like,
good one from the south?
go on, go on.
Because I'm on the south coast, I get firecrest.
Oh, wow.
Just
In the
one.
garden.
There's a few goldcrest as well, but yeah, one firecrest. It's spending the whole winter here, which is
And
really
then
cool.
you can't attract those to your garden, can you? Are they looking for a particular type of habitat or bush
Yeah,
or tree?
they like cover. They love things like holly, and certain evergreens and evergreen oak as well, holm oak. But yeah, they kind of eat insects most of the winter. It's not unheard of though that goldcrests in extreme cold will go onto a fat feeder. That sometimes happens, not too often. And I'm assuming firecrest might do the same if it's really, really, really cold. But ordinarily, no, it's just keep your eyes peeled and hope you get lucky.
Yes, good luck, everybody. I'd like to say a massive thank you to my colleagues Luke, Katie, and Sean. Thank you. But also to Claire and Lisa from the events team who've worked incredibly hard behind the scenes to make this event run smoothly. Please do register for our next session, which is next week, looking back at Big Garden Birdwatch and how we've all got on. And also the Gull ID session that we were talking about. That should be a really good one. We're going to be giving lots of useful tips, lots of pictures, lots of comparison shots so you can tell your gulls apart. And thank you for watching, and thank you for being RSPB members. We couldn't do any of the things we do without the support that you give us. So take care, and we'll see you again soon. Bye bye.